how important is for clubs to have someone there, either on a full-time basis or even if they are consulting?
You need to have medical personnel involved. From a time when the player walks in for training sessions, as a doctor, you can be able to pick up today, so and so is not okay. What we're having is the issue where injuries are not entirely known, but they are being treated. PSL has involved medical insurance. So the only issue is if the team, unfortunately, at the time does not have the power to pay now, then it becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Boot with myself, the Super Journal. As you can see, we've got a new set. Hopefully the guest complements this new set and is on fire like our guest. Speaking of who, I've got a medical doctor in the house, Dr. Siboniso Dlamini, a good friend of mine, but today I'm going to grill him a little bit, just playing. No, no need to make the good doc nervous. But doc, welcome to our set, Behind the Boot with Super Journal. We've been chomping at the bit to get a MD in the house. And maybe let's start there by way of introduction, just kind of the stuff that you get up to, and obviously we'll dig in.
Okay, thank you for having me, my friend. Basically, my work is my hands are quite full, I must say.
Thank you for your time.
I'm a 5 o'clock or maybe 4:45 person in the morning, waking up, making sure my day is ready, setting up all the way to maybe until 6 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But then so how it runs is usually I work in a hospital. I also work in sport on the side. So basically I make sure I juggle that. But luckily everything has its own schedule. So I just make sure that I slot everything into place. And I'm into sport medicine and I'm a gynecologist by profession, by the way. So
Nice.
So yeah, basically that's me. And
Yeah. I've been feeling a bit broody. I told my wife that I want number 3, so maybe we will come consult there. So sports medicine is like a side thing. Why don't you do it full time? Why do you have to juggle so many things at the same time?
So basically what I realized was as sport medicine is actually what has made me, and it carried me. In fact, sport has carried me from my days of medical school. There's a lot of things that happened, and as one would know, actually sport gives a lot of therapy for a lot of people because it's you're in your own zone, and whatever you do, it's just you in that moment. But then I realized that there's also the ladies football that needs some attention. And so I think that is why I chose the other route that I said, okay, maybe in the gynae, because there's fertility issues that are involved in there. So it's things that we work on. And and that's my biggest interest. So sport, yes. And then, so it becomes difficult for me to say which one is my side hustle.
Yeah.
But because obviously there's a 8 to 4 job in the hospital, then that makes sport a side hustle because sport of the hours where we work.
Yeah. It obviously lends itself into something where you can pick up consultancy work and all of that. And speaking of that, obviously we see you a lot doing stuff for Polokwane City. We see you do a lot of stuff for the Confederation of African Football as well. So how's that experience been? Just, take us into your world of medicine. How do the two worlds come together? Sports, in this case, football, and what you do on a day-to-day basis, because it has evolved a lot, if I can put it that way.
To that. I think one thing I must really applaud is how the guys have worked so hard to improve from how medicine and sport were just things that are worlds apart, and now to almost working hand in hand with it. And so yes, I work with KEF quite a lot, and I would thank a lot of gentlemen for having made sure that, or whatever platform they have, they give growth for other people. If I just name one person quickly, as Dr. Tulani Ngwenya, I think he's done quite a good job in Africa to say in terms of making sure that in the southern part we are settling down. So luckily, soccer plays in certain hours of the day, and the hospital also works in certain hours. So because of the schedule that we have, you basically are able to slot in to say, no, okay, fine. On that day, I would be able to handle this, and on that day, So you give your hours time and obviously traveling and whatever, then you can slot it in. I think, yeah, that's how I basically slot it in because you get quite a busy schedule. But yeah.
So you don't feel at some point, because obviously there are clubs, if I can name maybe top tier in the Betway Premiership, for instance, you've got your Mamelodi Sundowns, Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates that, correct me if I'm wrong, seem to have a doctor that's on there. I know some of the doctors have their own practices and whatever, but they seem to be at the club premises on a day-to-day basis. I mean, if you go to Klorkop, you'll see Carl Tabani and
Secret Paul.
Dr. Paul as well. They're almost on a full-time basis. I know they do their own things
Yes.
on the side as well. But how important is for clubs, especially our local clubs, as times and medicine evolves, to have someone there either on a full-time basis or even if they are consulting, but constantly be in the loop around what's going on with players' welfare in general?
I think I can overemphasize the importance of a medical personnel in the space of football or in the space of sport, but this time around in the space of football. I'm saying this because, like you're saying, it is almost, you can't separate the two. For as long as players, from a time when the player walks in for training sessions, something that's that small, as a doctor, you can be able to pick up today so and so is not okay. So that picks up, and then as the training setup starts, the training setup is going on, and even some injuries that are taking place. It maybe someone is absent-minded. There's a lot of things that can take place. So I think it's a very important for almost each and every soccer team or every athletic company that is trying to work with athletes to try and make sure that they're as close as possible to the doctors or to the medical team. It doesn't have to be a doctor per se, but in this day and age, I would recommend quite a full cohort of medical personnel, the doctor, the psychologist, the physio, the fitness trainers. There's basically a lot that goes into it. And obviously that goes into also the expertise that is associated with it, because an injury is not just an injury. I may pick it up now because the player got injured now, but there's somebody on the other side that I need to say, listen, because this is what you do and this is where your expertise goes in. Because remember, this is a professional person. If it's different when me and you are just injured and then we say, okay, just fix my bone. And it's so that I can walk, maybe I can run a bit. But for them, they need to do those quick turns. They need to get back to full training. And if you don't use a
It's their
proper person,
livelihood.
thank you. This is their life. So if you don't use the experts that are involved in it, you just use, sorry to say, but just use a person who says, I can do it, as opposed to somebody who's saying, no, this is my duty, this is my job. And I know if I treat it this way, this is how much it gives you, this is how much it's going to be resolved, the problem that you have.
Do you think clubs understand that, the fact that they, because it's, you look at times that clubs, maybe when they travel, the medical doctor is not there, but obviously I think the rules of the game, the NSL, whatever, requires that at any given time there be a medical doctor there, whether the away team provides one or the home team has got, a full complement of medical doctors, physios, or whatever the case may be. Do you feel like clubs understand that? Are we still a bit too far? Because if you look at the PSL in general, it almost looks like a world of haves and have-nots, where a lot of clubs have embraced medicine, and a lot of clubs, I don't know if it's cost-cutting or it's just maybe not quite understanding how medicine has evolved.
I think I'm glad you basically just went straight to the cost cutting. I believe the Professional Soccer League has tried to make it clear to almost every other person who is involved, that to every other team that is involved, to say you need to have medical personnel involved in your team. Now, the next step is number one, do they understand? Like you're saying, have they embraced it? The answer is yes. A lot of teams have embraced it, and a lot of teams are working with medical personnel. However, it then lacks that day-to-day presence of a medical personnel. And then on top of that, we don't have the understanding of saying, unfortunately, the more sophisticated you want to be in terms of, how may I put this, in terms of treatment of the players that you have. And if you invite a specialist, you must have special equipment. And like you're saying, the special equipment comes with the cost. So unfortunately for some it's a honest, I cannot afford. But some it's a maybe what if I move this because I still get the benefit of it all. So if I move this that way, then I still have that benefit, then I'll still move. But up until you hit that emergency where now you need this personnel right here and now, then it becomes a problem. So just to summarize it, I think they've embraced it, but some are still trying to catch to it because you basically have got the upper group and then you've got the lower group, so that becomes a bit of an issue.
Can clubs get away without having a medical doctor?
The answer is no. They can do it, but when problems arise, then they will have to answer to that. And unfortunately, when that happens, it's the players that suffer. It's a very painful situation where you see a player that could have just been saved by the simple, okay,
the basics that an
like just simple
MD would have
basics.
had
Exactly.
instead
Because,
of, yeah.
Yes, because what we say is, number one, our responsibility as the medical personnel in sport is to say, simple example, it's a game day or game time. The player is injured or he gets a knock, if I may put it that way. So now, what type of injury does he have? So you will think based on your first examination on the spot, and then thinking, okay, I need to do investigations. Then, depending on what the investigations show, then you know what type of injury you have. Then you know this is how you're going to treat this injury. What we're having is an issue where injuries are not entirely known, but they are being treated. So we always ask the question, what are you treating? Because that is very important. Because that is what will give you the durability of a player, where if he's got a niggle, we can say, no, it's just a niggle. It's just a niggle. No, just give something for pain. When you take away the pain, yes, the player can play. But if you don't know what type of injury you have, you could be worsening it. And by the time it becomes worse, the player is done and then there are problems.
So everyone has their role. A fitness trainer has its role. A physio has its role. And then you have an MD, essentially. And those, what I'm hearing you say is you cannot risk to have one or the other, in terms of whether it's cutting cost or shortchanging the player, as it were, having, for instance, a fitness trainer take the role of a doctor, a physio take a role of a doctor. It's not the same,
Exactly.
I can sprain my ankle and think it's just a sprain, have a look, the physio touches here and there, but you might find that maybe I tore something, and that's where you need the expertise of an MD.
Yes, and exactly. And that's when even the different modalities of investigations that we use actually come into play. Because it's as opposed to just saying, no, but it's an ankle that got injured. Let's just do an X-ray. You're going to miss certain things. So unfortunately, some of the expensive equipments, the modalities that are needed in terms of investigating, that's another issue also. But luckily, PSL has involved medical insurance with us. So at least that one is really going to play quite a big role into that. So the only issue is now you pay first and then claim later. So if the team, unfortunately, at the time does not have the power to pay now, then it becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah. And I'm not absolving the teams here, but I'm basically saying it's a general principle of life that even with me, if my medical funds, day-to-day funds have run out, I'm probably gonna cut corners. I'm gonna say no, I must pay this amount first, and then no, I'm gonna try. But by that time, I've spent so much money going to different people who, so it's better to just get experts in there to get the job done. I wanted also to ask, what is a medical? Because we see this hyped up, even in our reporting, we say deal concluded subject to medical. But what is this medical? In overseas, we've seen, social media is so great nowadays that you get behind the scenes, and you see players, getting tested, breathalyzers or whatever the case may be. I don't know what that equipment is called. You're the expert here. You can explain. But when it comes here at home, we don't see too much of that. First of all, I'd like an explanation as to what is a medical, and are there different rules around how to go about it? Because what we see locally and what we see abroad seems to be chalk and cheese.
Okay. So in a medical is basically that process where you are coming in as a player into the team, and we need to make sure that you are thoroughly checked. So by saying that, what am I saying? There's a general examination of basically they start from the history taking, where you need to ask the player as to, okay, who are you? How old are you? Have you had any injuries at home? Do you have any uh, issues of your heart, cardiac issues? Is there any medical issues that are at home? Are you an asthmatic player? Have you had any injuries before? Have you had any operations before? If you've had them, what did they do? So it's a whole lot of questioning that goes into making sure that you align to your examining of the player. The next thing when you move into examining the player, it's to make sure you thoroughly check the player. Almost every other, all the joints, all the bones, check the neck, check the chest, the spine, check the head. Can the player see? Can the player attend? Can the player hear? Almost all the joints are in check. So that is basically the medical. Then we move toward mimicking the sorry the game situation. So you see them on the treadmill and you see them connect to the ECG, because now you've listened to the heart, you couldn't find anything. You've done the ECG echocardiogram where you are players lying down and you're looking at the heart. How is it? And I realize, okay, this person is just relaxing. So now let's put him into the test, because at the end of the day, you are here to run. So let's see if that running is not going to provoke anything. So you put them on the treadmill and you get them to run. You connect the ECG. Then you monitor the heart as the player is running, and then you monitor their breathing. Also has, hence you will see the periodizer that you put there. So you basically are working to make sure that this whole situation is mimicked to a point where you're thinking, okay, now I think we're fine. And even before that, on the examination, you'll be making them taking the knees, twisting and turning them to say, because that's what they're going to be doing. So you want to make sure, basically, that's what the medical. Then you move into whatever this we've done may not show me what's in your blood. Okay, so now we need to check. Is your whole blood, there's something we call a full blood count, where the whole blood, we're checking your whole blood system if you are fine. And then we check the kidneys, we're doing the urinary, we check the liver if it's fine. Then we can even check for viral things for players that are coming from areas of infectious diseases, so that you basically make sure that all these these things are done. And then that is done, obviously, you do that, the player comes in, then you do that almost every 6 months for the players to know. Or if there's any injuries, then in terms of rehabilitation, is this player now fully recovered when you're making these tests? Because each and every muscle in the body has its own function.
Correct.
So you want to make sure the tests are used to check, is this muscle able to do that? If they've had injuries before, how far were they? What was done to them? So that you can see if the rehabilitation is done. Basically, that's a medical that's a medical in full term. And then we check the urine also. There are things that are always getting secreted. And fortunately we can also check if the player is using any illicit drugs, to see if there's anything in the urine. So those are the things that we look at to think this player is fully fine. We are okay. We can go. However, now the issue becomes that part where we say, can the team afford to be paying this? Now,
I was about to say, it sounds expensive.
Yes. Now, who must pay for this? Does the player pay for himself because it's coming to the team, or the team pays because they want to have the team? So that also plays its own role, of which in most cases the teams actually carry the load of this, unless you're going to the team, they say, before you come in, we want to have 1, 2, 3, then you can try and do that. But in most cases, the team would do them. These are not things that are very difficult to have. It just needs planning. If you plan, if you work as a team, it's things that are quite possible to achieve. However, the issue of funds, of money, does play a part in it. So basically, that's.
Can I go to a clinic and get the nurse to give me a report, and then come back to the club and say, the nurse has cleared me, so I'm good to go. I don't have any diseases. I'm not carrying anything. And then, because I mean, we're talking about the expenses. It's obvious that at one point or the other, clubs generally could find themselves in a situation where they cut costs.
True that. And the answer is, you could try. I'm using this word carefully, because if unfortunately, sport is an area that needs expertise. For a general practitioner, somebody who just works with people every day and he sees things, there are things that you may take lightly, only to find when you come into the sport world, it's actually very important. So there are things, those are the things that unfortunately will then force you to go into the areas of sport medicine doctors. We've got quite a few in the country. So that's when, unfortunately, you may have to go, if you want to do it on your own, you may have to go to those doctors so that even the language that is spoken amongst each other is common, so that we don't get, I said, because now if you go to a clinic, sister's going to we check your blood pressure, we check your pulse, we check your heart. If it's fine, that's okay. But then system may not have the luxury to say, okay, now even the machine, you don't even know how well are they serviced and all this. So it plays a part in that. It plays a role. So the advice would be, unless the people you go to before joining the team are recognized sport experts, then it may give you an issue, because then it may have to be repeated wherever you're going.
Because I see a situation here where, we cut corners because essentially we try and just figure out and confirm that the player is not sick.
Yes.
Or doesn't have a long-term illness that could cut short their career. Hence, if we're giving them a 5-year contract, they will see out the duration of the contract. But having said that, we've seen it around the world, and you probably agree with this statement I'm about to make as a MD, that one cardiac arrest during a football match is one too many.
Exactly.
So in situations like that, and we've seen a couple of cases where players collapse during matches, they go out. We've had a George Maluleka happen to him, I think 2 seasons ago, when he was at Amazulu. You had a player die at Golden Arrows. You've had a player die at Richards Bay. Obviously, I don't know if you would have been privy to the full post-mortem or the reports. We've had players at the European Championship have cardiac arrest. We've had players die all around the world. Where do then the sports doctors, the medicine field, miss the mark? Because you'd think, especially in a country, developed countries where all the equipment is there, and a player like Christian Eriksen, for instance, has a heart attack on the pitch.
No, I understand. So, in all honesty, I think the issue about sport on its own, it has a risk of, if you talk to almost every other forensic doctor in the country, will tell you that, because when you're training, your heart pumps that fast to pump the blood so that it's circulated. At the later stage, it's smooth and it's pumping comfortably. Now, what would usually happen is they get what we call a hypertrophy, where, because when you're lifting, what happens to your muscle? They get bulky. So even the heart does that. But there's a certain level of bulkiness that may become a bit of a problem for them. So that on its own is the risk that we're saying in sport, like even the long run, the athletes that are doing long distances, they actually, those are the issues that we actually face. That's where we say, train, yes, but also have those periodization where you're saying, no, I've trained, now get yourself some rest, and then you move.
Rest is important.
It's very important. However, even having said that, there's still an area where maybe I wouldn't use Eriksen, because obviously I think it was a different story. I think it was probably that's why he was able to come back and play. That, but I think it was just the issue of having been a trainer, and it must have been one of those risk factors. Because when we're saying it's a certain percentage that will get it in your lifetime, you may see one. But when you pick other players, there are other things that players also do take that affect their body in a certain way, and then the heart does take a knock. When we're talking about healthy living on a player, we're actually talking about the player being responsible for their own life. So you don't just take anything. Now, unfortunately, that it takes you back to your background, to your surrounding, to your lifestyle, to your understanding of the things that you're supposed to be taking into your body, and what effect does it have in your body. We always say, whatever I'm taking, what effect does it have on my body, and what effect would it have on the output that I'm going to give, and how it's gonna basically work out the two. So that's basically the issue. It's always, some have got medical conditions that maybe were neglected, maybe were not seen as they were growing, and then it's worsening as they start becoming active. Some have got situations where it's a risk because of the sport itself, and then some have got a risk because of their lifestyle. And unfortunately, you do get a few that the lifestyle become an issue, so it affects them.
So what are the preventative methods, or it's mainly just to do those medicals every season? Because I suppose in a real world situation, all things equal, each club is supposed to do a medical of every single member of the squad upon returning for preseason.
True. So the preventative measures will basically say, let's give an example. Let's say you've done your medical, all is well and good. Now you are within the team, we're working, we're doing our periodization, and the training is also that, like you said, the fitness trainer is going to have to play the part in how much are we loading these players? How much are we giving them time to rest? Do we have the stats of if you go to Sundowns, if you go to Chiefs, you go to Pirates? I'm just mentioning those few, and even if you go to Polokwane City, I think the guys are doing pretty well. You find that we know that um, one player has played so much minutes, so now it's his time to rest a bit. And then we say, okay, we're going to play you so many minutes. That's why sometimes you hear they say, no, he just needs his last. I think I actually got this when I was growing up in sport from Coach Tabo. It was like, no, he's actually left with his last 20 minutes just to feel his and then we can give him some rest. And that's how nice it is when we've got people who speak the language, who embrace the fact that the medical team needs to have an input. The medical team will say, but I think we're now overloading, as opposed to the coach is saying, no, this is my team. I say what I say and it goes. So now when he says that, you're like, okay, but now when challenges do come, the injuries are now there. You are not going to stand there and say to the coach, but coach, I told you, no. You will have to try and work because it's within us. I must say, as doctors, it's within us to say, the situation is here now. What do I do?
Yeah.
It's almost like someone saying, no, we told you that this lifestyle is going to give you problems. And when problems are there now, unfortunately, we have to deal with the problems.
Yeah, that's true.
And then on top of that, like you said, the full cohort even includes dietitians. It includes psychologists. So we will tell you that this is the list of food you can choose from. Unfortunately, it's not easy for every other player to keep up with that, or it's not easy for every other team to have those dietitians. And again, even the very same dietitians, they're not just any dietitians, they're sport dietitians, because you have to make sure that you're giving what is needed.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like as if these are a group of people you need to find a player, exclude them from the world, keep them in a certain lifestyle, which cannot be.
It's difficult.
It's difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like that. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's how you would actually. Those are the preventative measures where we're looking at, number one, making sure that we're taking the good diet, we're doing good periodization, and then on top of that, when they actually did maybe have certain people who on diet will say, no, we're doing it's a cheat day today. But then how much did you take in and how much you're supposed to be? There's a lot of work that goes in.
So can I have a burger a week? Is it okay?
You could have a burger a week, depending.
Okay.
So what we always talk about the calories you take in. I remember doing this with my cousin Welil, saying, so how much do you need a day? And if you need mechanism, maybe you need 300 kilocalories per day, and then but you're busy taking 500, so you're actually taking a lot. And then on top of this, versus when you are needing 300 and you're also burning a certain amount of calories that you see. So that's what I'm saying. So you can have your burger, but provided you're going to try and bake it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, over a long period of time, you can't outtrain a bad eating habit. So it will catch up with you. So you need to always try and keep up with a good diet.
You were talking about injuries and, communication with the coaching staff. How involved are you with periodization as a medical doctor? Because like you said, coaches can be stubborn at times, but they need to understand to a large degree that it's also about the welfare of the player. And what sort of data do you use to determine whether you've overloaded a player and it's time to stop?
Thank you for that. I think so. Just to answer quickly in terms of how involved I am in terms of periodization, because of the setup where I am, the team that I work for, I'm not on the daily basis on the ground, but before the training, during the training, and after the training, I'm in communication with the physio, Tebogo's Tunya. So he would always let me know that, Doc, we've got this problem. And so what do you think we should do? I'm like, okay, fine, let's work it on this way. Inform the coach, make sure the physical trainer is aware of that so that we work as a team. And I must say, I think it's been working pretty well. And
yeah, Polokwane City, I must commend you guys. They are one of the fittest teams in the league. It's no surprise that they are, despite some might say limited resources, they are competing with the big guns, and that's why the big guns want to buy their players, because
the old man has done
they are so fit.
So what we're saying is, I'm not that much involved in terms of the deal, but however, because of my background and my understanding and the type of, that's why when we're talking about communication, when we're saying, are we speaking the same language? I will call Debza, and then he will let me know this is the issue. Now, with this issue, number one, what do we think is the issue? How can we handle the issue? And then on top of that, so what is the way forward? So we're saying, I am involved, and in terms of the planning and everything. And every time when I get there, I will get a chance of, every now and then, and I go there and I get a chance of seeing the players, and then we get to see how far are they. And then our physical trainer will make sure that we're on the training, so and so probably overloaded. Do we need to give him some rest? And they'll say, no, we decide to give him a few days of rest. But unfortunately, because of the busy turnover of the games, we don't have that much luxury to say this one can just sit there. And it always do. We got to say, okay, fine, we'll give him this much time, either a day or two, then he comes back, just so that he can get those recovery. So that's that. I think I forgot some of the questions that you asked me. If you may remind me, the last one.
No, yeah, because we were talking about involved in periodization. The data that you use, obviously, I think you've pretty much covered it. The data that you use to determine that the player is being loaded. So that's essentially what I wanted to ask. Just how involved are you in terms of the periodization? Maybe even not just you necessarily, but how much is a medical doctor overall supposed to be involved in the periodization of a footballer? Whether you work for Polokwane City or you work for Mamelodi Sundowns, because as I said at the top of the show, the medicine is evolving, and coaches, fortunately or unfortunately, you have to embrace it. You can't just like throw players in there willy-nilly. You need to, hence coaches now have started talking about squad depth. That's why it's so important, because players, if you're playing 3 games a week, which is currently what is happening, given that the Betway Premiership started a bit late, and playing catch up to make sure that by the end of May it's done. June it's the playoffs. July it's rest, preseason. August the season starts up again.
Yes.
So your role in that, or the role of a medical doctor in that.
Yes, and I think it would be unfair to take all the glory on things like this. Now, the periodization, like I said, there's communication, there's a fitness trainer. Our responsibility as the medical personnel is to see when it obviously we watch, but we're almost like the silent watchers. Unless there's a problem, then we'll chip in. However,
you only come in when
exactly. So, but the fitness trainers and the coaches, the head coaches, those are the people who work on that. So because of the data, they say, so we say per week we need so much. And then so has played so many minutes. Let's rest this one. Let's shift this one. This one is done. This one can now stand a whole 90 minutes. He's done so many 90 minutes. Let's give him so much time out. So those are the data that you use in the system. And this actually takes you down to a proper planning where you need to sit down, you need to have a profile of a player. You need to see this one has done so well so that you can have the output to see. But how much is he giving at? How much distance is he covering even during the game? Now we see when he's starting dropping, is he tired? Is he getting fatigued? Because once they're tired, then they're prone to injuries. So that is where the whole issue comes. But that is the biggest role is basically the coach and the fitness trainer, because that's the one who actually does the loading, the relaxation, everything. For you as a medical personnel, it's not always that you are there on the thing. You sit and watch, and then it's the way he's running, because we've got what we call observation. We can observe like, the way he's running, it doesn't look like he's fine. Mentally, it doesn't look like he's fine. So those are the things where you would chip in. As much as you will be aware of the whole surrounding, but there are people who play their roles at certain intervals. So they need to actually do their part, and then it's easy to work it that way.
I want to get your thoughts also on doping, anti-doping. There's been a big push, especially from the mother body in the continent in CAF around, anti-doping classes, seminars, and even just from, publicly getting the media involved around this. What is that? What those seminars, what do they focus on? Are they suggesting that, I know when people say doping, they're thinking people are like buying drugs on the streets, whatever, but maybe you can give context as to when you say a player has failed a doping test, what does that look like? And why players randomly? I know drug-free sport used to do it consistently in the PSL. They are back now, from what I hear.
Yes.
But not as much, because maybe it's also credit to the players that they are taking care of themselves a lot better, and not putting stuff that they don't know into their bodies. And then when you take a urine sample, the guys failed the drug test. So maybe paint a picture around anti-doping and the seminars that have been happening and the talk around that. What does it look like?
So to start with, when we're talking about this whole doping and why is it important, we look at every individual involved in sport should be able to just physically and by their own natural strength, and obviously working hard and training, be able to compete amongst each other. So no player is no athlete is expected to be using other drugs to enhance whatever performance in order to surpass the others. Basically, that's what we're trying to say. And then we move on to saying there are players who intentionally and will be aware that if I take this, I feel much better, and I will be able to. We're all aware of the other. Maybe not all of us, but we're mostly aware of some players that have taken enhancing substances to make themselves better than others. They say this one runs a whole 90 minutes, but after 90 minutes, he crashes.
He took something before the game.
Exactly.
And it's not just a Red Bull.
That's exactly what we're saying. So now, unfortunately, those are things we do not want. But then on the other side, there are substances that the players may not be aware that if I take this, it actually has substances. Like you've got traditional medicine. You're not there when it's being mixed. You don't know what goes in. Because most of these are natural herbs, but at the same time, they may enhance the performance. So now, when that happens, it becomes a bit of a pain on the player. However, player needs to know that is your responsibility. Whatever you put in your body, when we check it, whether in terms of blood, in terms of urine, you are the one responsible for that. And then there are times where we're saying, like I mentioned, the issue of a player with asthma. So you'll be taking a drug that will kind of like boost your ability. So now, like salbutamol, for example. So now, when you're taking those there, then obviously you need to have a doctor say, but this one he's taking it, yes, but he's taking it within the dose of performance of him to be alive, because we still need them to be alive. And on top of that, it's not to enhance, it's to treat his medical condition. So some of that is actually play. So that is one thing. And
so a banned substance is something that enhances your performance.
We're basically saying you cannot take this, because if you take it, it will make you perform much better than other players, but not because you are good, but because of what you. It's almost like if somebody takes something that will make them not get tired. So we're like, okay, so you actually, other kids can run and run and run and they get tired, but you won't get tired because you've taken something.
Yeah.
And we're here thinking you're doing all to find there are things you're using. That's what we're just trying to cut out. We're saying let everybody have a fair chance. And fortunately, for as long as you train hard, you will be able to achieve. I remember when I took captaincy in my residence in medical school, they said, give us a speech. I said, guys, for as long as we are mentally and physically fit, the other team may dribble us, but they will not outrun us. So for as long as you're fit, you will be able to achieve a certain expected functionality, because sport has got that you need to run from one sport to another, from one point to another. So that's one thing that we sort. And then we're saying the seminars that are there is so that every personnel that gets involved in this drug testing, you need to be able to know, number one, what is it that we need from a player? How do you approach a player? Then how to take care of that very same specimen? We call it, Dr. Chorangone calls it the most expensive commodity, and that's the urine. It's like, it's a rare commodity, because trust me, you can sit there from 8 o'clock after the game is done until 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
But as long as it's not coming, you have to wait. Almost like in the mine, if you have to dig, you have to dig until you find it.
Yeah.
So
because that's what's going to determine.
Yes, and it is very important to actually treat this this specimen with care, because you don't want, number one, when in how, so the seminars are to teach medical personnel to say, this is how you retrieve it, and two, this is how you store it, and three, this is how you transport it. So those are things that because at the end of the day, you've done your test, and I put it anyhow, then it comes back, it's messed up, it has got some, interference on it, or contamination, if I may use the word, and then now suddenly you are banned. Unfortunately, that's unfair. So I need to make sure that I take care of the specimen that you've given me, and I then store it properly and transport it properly, so that when it gets to the lab, it's tested. And then we also use it for if we need to do other tests that we need to do that are not related to your name. Just because you've got a urine sample, then we could do that. But basically, that's what the seminars are for. And I'm happy with the community of sport being aware of the problems that these the burn substances are bringing to us. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of energy drinks that come every now and
that was going to be my next question, to say, how do you then police these so-called banned substances? Because a lot of the players, whether in rugby, football, I suppose football is a bit of a different story, because the cases that have come out when players have been banned, they've hardly ever been able to reverse the ban, because it's not because they're taking supplements, they're taking something completely illegal and banned.
Exactly.
But in terms of when I'm taking supplements, when it's creatine or whatever, how do I know? Or is it supposed to be something that's always prescribed by the team doctor, or someone in the sports field, to make sure that I stay within the guidelines? Because how do I know that what I'm putting into my body? I go to the shops, I go to a pharmacy, and I'm looking for something to muscle recovery, building my muscle, whatever the case may be. And I don't know that it might have just a small dose of something that's a banned substance. So how, I'm trying to help the players also to understand avoiding taking banned substances, because these doping tests are also random.
Exactly.
You might have taken something overnight, magnesium pills or something to help you sleep better, recover better. Tomorrow afternoon after a game, you get pulled in, urine sample, Mazola is taking a banned substance.
Yes. No, I think that's a very good one. So now, that's where the medical team comes in. Number one, like we said, as an athlete, please know that whatever you take in is your responsibility. And two, whatever then I give you as a doctor in the team, then I am responsible for that. However, it would affect you, and then I need to be able to account for it. Hence, when we're taking that, we always ask, have you taken any medication in the past few days? Have you done one? So those are things that we basically are going to ask, because we need to note them. If you declare them, and in the declarance you can tell that this was given by a doctor, and there's nothing you needed it for your own. So there are cases that can be worked around. However, in situation where you just go past a shop and you just buy an energy drink and you drink it, it's not easy to wake me up at 2 in the morning and ask me, Doc, I've just bought this drink. Can I
send you a screenshot of what's inside it? Yeah.
So it's actually it's a bit of a difficult situation. However, it needs commitment from players.
Do you discourage players from buying any random thing at the shops?
I actually do.
I
do. I do tell the guys, please, man, try not to just go anywhere and buy the things that that you do not know what it contains. You know, when you're just going to a shop and you buy the amandla juice, and then next suddenly we call you out, and then there are problems, and then you're thinking, I don't even know where this is. And unfortunately, sometimes when they're a bit intoxicated, they would take things that they're not even aware of what it is, they will not even remember. So that becomes a bit of an issue. So it boils down to behavior. It boils down to understanding. It boils down to the will to want to do this. There's quite a few players that I actually I talk to, and one will say, listen, this is all I take. And if it's not that, I'd rather take. And even if I take water, I'll make sure that it's sealed water that I can and I can see it's sealed. So don't just take things that are open, because unfortunately we work with different people. You play for different teams, and people may get crazy, and things may happen. So you get a spiked drink, you don't even aware, and then it becomes a problem for you. So it is an important aspect of football in the whole, so that we don't get unfair advantages from one person to another. And also the whole football fraternity needs to actually embrace this with that good hands, so that we can continue with a clean playing.
100%. Stick to rice and chicken and water. That's what I'm hearing. Doc, as we wrap up, I'm gonna, I've introduced a new thing where just sort of asking the viewers of the show, those who listen on different platforms as well, around just throwing in some questions. And they were quite excited when they heard me saying I've got a MD in the house. So they sent a few questions. If you allow me just to pose a few in your direction here. We were talking about supplements as well, saying, why don't you encourage smaller framed players? They used Relebohile Mofokeng as an example, alongside, I'm trying to remember, obviously relays of small build as well, in terms of taking supplements that can help them bulk up a little bit. How do you go about that? And Oswin Apollis, for instance, an explosive player who some may say if he goes abroad might need to be a little bit bulkier. Do you subscribe to that? What is the advice from a medical point of view around, becoming bigger and stronger? Is it just from naturally being so, or there are ways to help a player sort of develop and become stronger and tougher, so to speak, if for a lack of a better word?
I think there are situations that you could interfere. However, I'm not one who believes in interfering with people's physique and whatnot. So if we're looking at what we call a body mass index, you would know if this player is underweight, if this player is becoming overweight. So, and this is the area where we now need to look at. And in terms of abilities of each player, remember that this person has got this ability because that's how they've been, that's how they play, that's how they see themselves, and that's how heavy they are in their own body. Now, when you compare to others, okay, because you're a bit smaller, then you get a bigger player like Cloaky who's just going to push really on the side and really. So in those instances, you would say, do we really have to bulk up really because he's smaller than Cloaky, or are we saying, fine, if really has got his own ways, he will outsmart Cloaky, and then he's going to get what he gets. He's going to get what he wants to get. So I don't really believe in altering physique. However, if you've got a player who's underweight, probably for whatever reason, is it a medical condition that is there, or maybe it was the issue of diet when they were growing up, yes, you could actually work on the player. Like, listen, and that's why when we talk about the glow that comes with money, they always say, people, hey, you were so small when you had money. if I see, look at my pictures when I was smaller, they're like, no, it was tough.
So you got money now.
So that's what they say. So basically what I'm saying is, there are instances where you could say, we can work around seeing if we can improve this particular part of your body or this frame for a good reason, or we can reduce for a good reason. Some of them, they were complaining about, there was a Golden Arrows goalkeeper at some point, they were complaining that he's a bit on the bigger side, but he used to play rugby, so they were saying things about him. And, so those are the things that we look at. However, I don't believe that players should be pushed to change you should discuss with the player. You should let him understand what is the issue that you have and what is it that you're trying to achieve. and you're saying, because of 1, 2, 3, can we do this? And then he must say, yes, I'm willing to do that. Now, the younger ones, unfortunately, because of the excitement that they get, they may find themselves having been pushed into a corner pushed into a side where they made to do things out of excitement, not being aware. And then later they realize, but I didn't want to do this. So it's a yes and no. If it's really needed, we can alter certain areas. But if not, then maybe leave the player into his own ability and into his own doing, because that way it's easy. Like I always say, I'm still to see a player who plays like Oswin. I looked at him. I was literally telling I think my niece the other time I was watching the game again at home, and you see how he drives the ball, and it's not even from a big lunge that he has to make before. It's just right from here, and the way it drives the ball, it's amazing. So with players like that, all you need to do is just guide them into keeping fit, keeping into the right shape. Then they'll probably give you what you want. As opposed to saying, no, because he's short, let's make him taller. But then his mind is not used to himself being tall. So now you're altering a whole system that he's been working with.
Let's take another one. Concussion. Obviously, all around the world, they're introducing concussion subs as well. How should we be dealing with it in the PSL as well?
I think the understanding is universal with that one. We've really embraced that, and I think it's concussion. You can't play around that. Now, the reason why we can't play around it, because it has a lot to do with the speed and the understanding of the play. Number one, the biggest injury that you could have a player who's bleeding in the head, and you really are thinking of something small, and that's something very big. Two, it will affect his oxygenation because of the way he breathes, because he can't see, he's not sure what's going on, he's a bit confused. So that's another thing. And lastly, it will affect his judgment, because now he can't. The concussions, they affect the player so much that if he's still in the heat, he will think, no, I'm fine. I can see the player. You stand there, you ask the player, are you fine? Can you do 1, 2, 3? Can you test? And the next thing you realize, when you look back as a medical, you stand up, you look back, he falls behind you. Then you've got a problem with that. So it's actually a very important part that I think all of us in sport medicine, we should be able to understand it properly and be able to pick up on your goal to say, no, this one has got a concussion. Can we stop? Unfortunately, the ones that get concussions are the ones that the team needs the most, because those are the ones who fight. Those are the ones who are going to get into those hard tackles. So now suddenly you are taking out somebody that you thought was actually working for the team, and then you are putting maybe someone who's not going to be that tough in terms of it.
Yeah.
I always say, if I have Onyango coming my way, if I have Ofori coming my way, listen, I'm moving. I'm moving. So it's a joke I always throw out. But it's actually, because those are the guys who are not scared of challenges. They'll go into those challenges.
But also at risk of
the others. And the nice thing about, I must actually speak for, I always say, it is not because they are trying to injure other players. If you've noticed, in most of the injuries they've done, it is because they were concentrating on the ball, but it's how they coming in their body structure, and then unfortunately other players get injured.
Yeah. Last one, mental health. Someone is asking a question about mental health of the players. How do you deal with that as well? Because sometimes we forget that they are human as well. They get affected by results or personal things at home. And the world of sport needs to think better around mental health. What are your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a very big aspect, I must say. I think, and mental health encompasses your childhood. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Now, how did it take you to get to where you are? Now you are here. What were your wishes with where you come from? So it's a lot of things. And now, what is your surrounding? How do the people that you relate with see you, and how do you see yourself over them? Are you the answer at home? Which, unfortunately, most of our players, if you notice the history of football, they'll tell you it's from a small town called so and so. Is from a small area. He's the breadwinner in the family. Now you started earning that same small 10,000 rand, but that 10,000 rand has to go home. Now you've got 3 siblings that are at school. Your mother needs to eat, and the team doesn't know any of that. Hence I say, we need to know players as our kids in the team. You need to know so and so comes from this place, is from this family, so and so is like this, so and so when he's angry, this is how he behave, when he's happy, this is how he behave, when he's not, when basically everything you need to be able to see. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work, but it's one of those things, once you are used to doing it, it becomes second nature. You can pick up and say, okay, this one is not fine now. So mental health is a very important aspect. It affects the game. It affects the output of the player.
Yeah.
It affects the dressing room. It affects quite a lot of things. So I think it's one of those things in this day and age we can no longer ignore. We really need to sit onto it and make sure this player get attention. If he's injured, has he got someone to talk to? Can he voice out what's happening? Does the coach even know that this player today, he lost his sister that he was very close to? And as opposed to this, you said, no, but I need you to play. He said, but yes, I want to play, but at this point in time, I'm not okay. Now the question is, how does that affect the team? Because the coach had you in these plans and now you are not okay. Is this a coach who doesn't care? Say, listen, I said to you I wanted to play. You said you want to play. If you don't play, you're going to the stand. Now the player has to force himself into that. So it actually involves quite a lot. It involves quite a lot. But then again, what I've noticed, most soccer players, you will see when they're with each other, they're talking, they're chappy, but they're softy inside. So you need to find a way, crack that shell, let them feel comfortable in talking so that you can, and don't use that information against them. Because there's nothing more painful than you opening up to somebody, and the next thing, once they know, then they start making jokes. Because in the dressing room, there's a lot of small jokes that go around over things that happened in the weekend or 2 weeks ago that somebody's not comfortable with. Then, or things that stays in the bag. Then suddenly we're all peeping in that bag like, what's in there? What are you saying? So it's a lot of things that goes into it.
Yeah.
Only find it's got probably a teddy bear that he was given, or a small token that was given at home. And he believes that this token, actually, it brings me luck. Whether you believe it does or it doesn't, I mean, that's not really your issue. But these are things that we need to understand. And we need to have this moments of a one-on-one with the players, let them be able to express themselves and be able to say, today I woke up, I'm not fine, so that you can attend to that. Basically, I feel like it's something that we should always have. Hence, the psychologists also are an important factor. Or they see the medical room is growing. Eh?
No,
it's quite
that's
big.
how it is. Doc, we've run out of time, but I mean, you nailed it. You were on the money. I think we covered most of even some of the questions that were asked on our social media page. But yeah, maybe soon we'll have a part 2, because invariably talking about the medicine space in the world of sport and football, as it were, we could go on forever. So that's MD in the house, Dr. Siboniso Dlamini. Thank you for your time, Doc.
No, thank you for having me, my friend. I think it was a good one, and I think it's something we really need to keep on talking about so that everybody's aware of the situation.
Absolutely. That's how we wrap it up.